against all the evil that Oblivion can conjure, all the wickedness that mankind can produce. We will send unto them only you. Rip and tear until it is done.
Hello my fellow hirelings of House Telvanni, I'm Neloth, and today I want to introduce to you my Doom Slayer build, an ode to the Doom games and the legendary Doom guy. This character is consumed with hatred after Daedra destroyed his home and family, and will unleash all that hate and rage on all the villainy of Skyrim. The Doom Slayer will be utilizing an assortment of weapons to make you feel like you are playing the Doom games, but in the Elder Scrolls setting, utilizing a greatsword, bow, crossbow, and even your fists to kill weak enemies and finish off tougher foes. The dragons, vampires, Daedra, bandits, he will be the only thing they fear. Before I begin, let me state, as always, that there are timestamps down below to make navigating the video much simpler, and also note that this character should be seen as a template, and you should feel free to make any changes that you wish. Now, let us witness the Doom Slayer rip and tear until it is done. The Doom Slayer was born in the city of Kvatch in Cyrodiil during the Third Era. His father was a trapper who hunted animals and sold their pelts, and his mother was a gardener who planted beautiful flowers and vegetables in their backyard. When the Doom Slayer turned 13, his father started to bring him on hunting trips to learn the family trade, and taught him how to use a blade and bow for hunting. On his first hunting trip, the Doom Slayer encountered a baby rabbit who he could tell was very hungry and sick and would not be able to survive the week. He asked his father if he could bring the rabbit home and care for it, and his father begrudgingly allowed him to. For the next week, the Doom Slayer cared and fed the infant rabbit and nursed her back to health, and both his mother and even his father started to become fond of the rabbit, and the family decided to adopt the rabbit as a pet, and the Doom Slayer decided to name her Daisy. Life for the Doom Slayer was perfect, going hunting with his father, then coming home to tell stories of his hunting adventures to his mother and Daisy. For 6 more years, life was perfect. But perfection never lasts. On a fateful day in the city of Kvatch, Oblivion gates started opening all over and Daedra poured out, slaughtering everything and everyone. The Doom Slayer and his father were in the market selling skins when it happened, and as they looked in disbelief at the Oblivion portal opening in the front of the city gate, they witnessed men, women, and children dying, including the Doom Slayer's mother, who was struck down by a mighty Dremora. When witnessing the death of his mother, both the Doom Slayer and his father screamed a battle-furious scream at the Dremora that echoed throughout the city as it fell apart. They unsheathed their weapons and charged the Daedra, cleaving a bloody tunnel through any they could see. They were able to clear a path to their home, as the Doom Slayer wanted to check on Daisy to see if she was alright. But when he reached his house, he saw that the Daedra put Daisy's head on a pike, right on the front door to his home. The Doom Slayer did not cry or say a word. All he did was clench his fists harder than any man possibly could, and he looked to his father, and they both nodded. They shared an equal mind and an equal plan. Both father and son charged the Oblivion Gate, slaughtering any Daedra in their path, and made their way through the gate and into the Deadlands, where they happened upon a large force. The father and son did not hesitate to attack the large force of Daedra. Back to back they fought. However, numbers can overwhelm, and so it happened. The packs of scamps and squads of Dremora wore them down, and a mighty Dremora cut his father and brought him to his knees. They had not said a word to each other since the Doomslayer's mother was slain. However, his father broke that silence and screamed one sentence to his son: "Kill them. Kill them all." Before the Doomslayer could even react, the same mighty Dremora dealt a final blow to his father. The Doomslayer was starting to grow weak, and yet he still lunged at the Dremora in an intense rage. However, the Dremora parried his blow and threw him to the ground. As the scamps were about to feast upon him, the mighty Dremora told them to yield and to take him. The mighty Dremora crouched down and said, "I see it in his eyes, pure rage. I could use a mortal thrall to call upon when I need." The Dremora then looked to his thralls and ordered them to throw him in the sarcophagus. The Daedra then dragged the Doomslayer to a large tower full of spikes and blood and death, and he was dragged to the top and was thrown in a stone sarcophagus covered in Daedric runes and symbols. The Doomslayer was placed and chained within the sarcophagus, and the lid was shut upon him. The Doomslayer slept for what felt like mere moments, until the lid to the sarcophagus then opened once more, and the Doomslayer looked upon the same mighty Dremora once again. The Dremora looked the Doomslayer in the eyes and said, "I have need of a slayer to vanquish my enemies and serve my lord. You will be a useful tool, mortal." The Doomslayer was blinded red with rage in his eyes, and was able to break the cold iron chains that held him, and charged the Dremora. The Dremora could only shout the word, "Wait," before the Doomslayer smashed his head into the sarcophagus, leaving nothing but teeth, brains, and paste everywhere. The Doomslayer then ascended the tower to the top, killing any Daedra in his way until he saw the sigil stone. The Doomslayer had no idea what it actually did, but he grabbed it and smashed it onto the ground, hoping it would at least cause some damage, and then his eyes went completely white. When the Doomslayer woke, he was surrounded by fresh air and snowy mountains. However, his moment of peace was cut short when a group of Imperials suddenly ambushed him. The Doomslayer was much too weak from the physical and mental anguish of what felt like a never-ending fight since Kvatch was burned to the ground, and so he surrendered, only thinking to himself, "At least it's not Daedra," and you know the rest. Now for the role-playing. When being carted off to Helgen, the Doomslayer will be very confused and still angry at what had happened to his home and the Daedric hordes, and after escaping Helgen, he will start to piece together that he had been trapped in that sarcophagus for 2 centuries. The Doomslayer will still carry a deep hatred for the Daedra, but seeing as how the Daedric threat had passed 200 years ago, he will feel lost and will follow either Ralof or Hadvar and deliver a message to Balgruf the Greater. After discovering that he is the Dragonborn, he will start a personal crusade to destroy any and all dragons in his sight, and will seek the Greybeards out immediately, hoping they can teach him more powerful shouts to slay dragons more effectively. You will want to do the main quest line immediately, and when in conversation with characters like Paarthurnax, you will want to be very impatient, not caring about words, but caring for how you will kill your next enemy. Not only will the Doomslayer want to rid Skyrim of all the dragons, but I would highly recommend joining the Dawn Guard and starting a crusade against the vampires and especially Lord Harkin. The Doomslayer will see that vampirism was created by Molag Bal, and that most vampires even worship him, which will enrage the Doomslayer, and he will fight them as hard as he fought the Daedra back in Kvatch. This goes without saying, but the Doomslayer will be very hostile towards Daedra. You can work with some Daedric princes like Meridia or Malakath, but if you ever get the chance to betray or defy a Daedric prince, I would recommend absolutely doing so. I would also recommend completely ignoring both the Molag Bal and Mehrunes Dagon quests, as both quests would really conflict with who the Doomslayer is as a character. As for what factions the Doomslayer would join, I already mentioned the Dawn Guard as a perfect fit, but I would also recommend the Companions, as they are a warrior faction that could give the Doomslayer a focus at the beginning of the game after feeling lost since Helgen. It is completely up to you if you want to embrace the powers of the werewolf in the Companions, but I would recommend curing the lycanthropy, as I feel the Doomslayer would feel uncomfortable keeping a power bestowed by a Daedric prince. As for other factions, you could join the College of Winterhold if you are starved for content, but the Doomslayer is not a learning man, and will not care much for spells or magic unless it is the Thu'um or scrolls, and I simply do not see the Doomslayer as being Archmage material in any way, so it's up to you, but I would recommend not. You will definitely not want to join the Thieves Guild, and you will want to slaughter the Dark Brotherhood. The Doomslayer will see the Thieves Guild as pathetic and cowardly, living in squalor, stealing, and relying on stealth to get their way. If there was an option to slaughter the Thieves Guild, the Doomslayer would gladly tear their heads off. However, you can destroy the Dark Brotherhood, and the Doomslayer will definitely want to slaughter them all, believing assassins are as pathetic as thieves, and will be angry with the Dark Brotherhood's worship of a dark deity like Sithis, and the murder of innocents as well. The Dragonborn DLC will be another good option, waging war against Miraak and Hermaeus Mora and slaughtering all the Daedra in Apocrypha will make the Doomslayer feel as he did during Kvatch. If you want, you can even take the Dragonborn DLC one step further. When reading the Black Books and fighting to the end, you can just reject the gifts of Hermaeus Mora and read the Black Book again to leave, making sure the Doomslayer does not fall for the lure of knowledge and get ensnared by Hermaeus Mora. When playing as the Doomslayer, I would recommend spacing out the game in Crusades, focusing solely on one threat at a time and completely annihilating them individually. I would recommend starting a crusade with the dragons and slaying every single flying lizard in sight, with the exception of Paarthurnax, as I feel the Doomslayer would have great respect for him after learning how he helped man rebel against the dragon cult. Then I would focus on slaughtering all of the Forsworn in the Reach. The Doomslayer will already be familiar with the Forsworn when fighting them at Karthspire and discovering Skyhaven Temple, and will be mad at how they kill innocent people and use foul dark magic. After clearing every dungeon of Forsworn, I would then focus on crusading the vampires and doing every single quest for the Dawn Guard possible. While doing these crusades, you will likely be clearing other villains that inhabit Skyrim as well, like the Dark Brotherhood, Bandits, Daedra worshippers, Silver Hand, Necromancers, and many others, so you should definitely slay those guys in between your other crusades. Now for the race stats and perks. I believe there are two races that perfectly encapsulate the Doomslayer aesthetic, and that is the Nord and the Orc. I would recommend a Nord, as being a human is more fitting for the Doom Guy character. However, the Orc special ability of Berserker is extremely in line with the character as well, so either race could work. You can also choose any other human race, however, the Nord's warrioristic culture and battle cry ability and humanoid appearance makes this the best option. For stats, I would recommend having an even level of health and stamina. However, in the beginning of the game, you may want to invest a little bit more in health. The Doomslayer is a high-risk, high-reward playstyle, and becoming a tank is not the goal. However, you definitely do not want to be one-shot, so health investment does seem a bit appropriate. The Doomslayer will be utilizing a lot of stamina for his power attacks with the Bloodskull Blade, which I will talk about a little later, as well as using the Slow Time perk when using bows and crossbows, which also costs a lot of stamina. Magic will not be used in any way for this character, so investment in Magicka would be highly unnecessary. For standing stones, I would recommend choosing the Warrior Stone first, and then afterwards, later in the game, I would recommend the Lord Stone, as you will become the Lord Slayer of literally everything. You can choose the Atronach Stone if you want to limit the amount of magic damage you receive. However, I feel like the Atronach Stone is a bit magical in nature, and the Doomslayer is not in any way a magical character. Now going into the skills. Your three main skills that you will be prioritizing will be Two-Handed, Archery, and Light Armor. Your three minor skills will be Block, Enchanting, and Smithing. However, you can also invest in Alchemy later in the game if you wish. Starting with the primary skills, in Two-Handed you will want all 5 in Barbarian, Champion Stance, and Devastating Blow. In Archery, you will take every perk in Archery with the exception of the last 2 ranks in Critical Shot. This skill tree is necessary in order to showcase the ranged aspect of the Doomslayer. Too bad no shotguns exist to be used. In Light Armor, you will take all 5 ranks in Agile Defender. The only reason you will not get more perks in this tree is because we are wearing a Heavy Armor helmet, which will render every other Light Armor perk useless. Now for the minor skills. In Block, you will take 3 ranks in Block and Quick Reflexes. The Doomslayer won't be doing much of blocking, but Quick Reflexes can be useful in specific encounters. In Smithing, you will take Steel, Elven, Advanced, Glass, and Dragon Smithing, as well as Arcane Smithing to upgrade the signature weapon of this build. And for Enchanting, you will take all 5 in Enchanter, Insightful Enchanter, Corpus Enchanter, and Extra Effect. While the Doomslayer does not use magic, we can roleplay that he is okay with using Enchanting because the sword he uses is, well, enchanted as well. And also, we will require enchanting his gauntlets with Fortify Unarmed so we can beat the ever-living shit out of some villains. For weapons, the Doomslayer will be using the Bloodskull Blade, as it has a very demon aesthetic to it, and also shoots ranged energy beams when using a power attack. The Bloodskull Blade cannot be further enchanted, but it can be tempered using smithing. The Doomslayer will also be using an enhanced Dwarven crossbow, or a Daedric crossbow if you have the expanded crossbow pack. However, the Dwarven crossbow feels more rewarding to acquire. Another weapon the Doomslayer will use is the Dwarven Bow Zephyr, because of its 30% faster fire rate, which is just perfect for a combat archer character. The last weapon the Doomslayer will use will be his gauntlets that will be enchanted with Fortify Unarmed. He will be using them to finish off weak and tough enemies alike, and it's just absolutely fun to go in swinging, beating the ever-living shit out of his opponents. For the armor, I tried to find armor that looks like the Praetor suit from the newer Doom games. However, there is really no similarity in Skyrim. However, the closest I could think of is the scaled armor with the heavy version of the Dawnguard helmet. Make sure to use the Brawler scaled bracers to further showcase the Doomslayer's brutality in unarmed combat. When enchanting the armor, make sure to focus on increasing the damage of two-handed archery and especially unarmed damage. For shouts, I would recommend using a combination of Marked for Death, Unrelenting Force, Slow Time, and Cyclone. Marked for Death will prove useful for enemies with high armor and exceptionally useful for dragons. Unrelenting Force should be pretty obvious. Slow Time is useful for archery, dodging blows, and closing the gap on certain enemies to maul them with your sword or fists. And Cyclone is just a fun shout that can be used to throw multiple enemies in the air, giving you time to finish them off with your sword or fists as they hit the ground. The combat for the Doomslayer is going to be very high risk, high reward. Because of the use of light armor and mobility will be a constant necessity like in the Doom games. Remember, even though the Doomslayer is a badass and strong, he is not a tank. When encountering enemies, make sure to use your bow or crossbow at first, then close the distance with either your greatsword or your fists. The best part about using a greatsword is evading close-quarter enemies will be much easier, and if you are skilled enough, you can kill enemies using your greatsword without taking a single hit, like when fighting trolls. The simplest way to explain the playstyle is crossbow for long range, bow for medium range, greatsword for close range, and unarmed for really close range. Now, this character does have all of the steps to becoming a stealth archer, especially with light armor and archery, but try to fight that urge and try treating Skyrim like the Doom games, but with a little less speed. The unique playstyle may be difficult to handle at first, but over time, it does become quite engaging. And that is the Doomslayer, a build that is full of hate and rage and will use that anger against all the evil Skyrim can throw at him. It is a very fun build and makes for a dynamic fight, especially with an arsenal of 4 different weapons to choose from depending on the situation. Normally, I find builds inspired by other games to be rather cringeworthy, and they usually have a weird look with using mods that don't fit the Skyrim universe, and have a really bizarre and poorly written backstory. But I am rather proud of how I implemented the Doomslayer seamlessly into the Elder Scrolls universe, and even incorporated a bit of the Oblivion game into the backstory with the destruction of Kvatch. I have made 2 builds in a row, and I want to assure you that was not intentional. I simply accidentally wrote the backstory in one night when inspiration hit, so I decided to finish the rest of the video as well, and modify the backstory afterwards. I will definitely still do more build videos, but they won't be a constant, so do not worry about that. And that is all I wrote. If you enjoyed this type of video, be sure to like the like button, like the subscribe button, and like the bell notification down below to be updated on future videos. And I will see you whenever the fuck I decide to upload again. House Telvanni be with you.
Please, O hero of Skyrim, I shall be ever so grateful.